Thanks. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Linn-Mar Community School District Board of Directors. We want to welcome the many guests in the crowd this afternoon. And we'd also like to thank the cabinet for attending and everybody else to attend as well. So the first thing we need to do is determine a quorum, please.
Director Foss? Director Lau-Lancaster?
Here.
Director Maury?
Here.
Director Thomas?
Here.
Director Walker?
Here.
Director Wall?
Here.
President Buckles?
Here. We have a quorum. So now we're going to adopt the agenda, but we want to make sure we adopt the agenda with one walk-in and 1101 personnel, please.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the 1101 walk-in exhibit.
Motion by Britt, second by Melissa. Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to go to 301, public hearing of FY24 amended certified budget. It's in Exhibit 601. A public hearing will be held on the amended budget for 23-24. We have anybody here that wants to speak about it? Hearing is closed. We also have a public hearing about the 2024 calendar, the amended school calendar for 2024. Any comments? Public hearing closed. We do not have any public audience communication, so we can go past that. We're down to the board visit, Novak Elementary visit, and I want to thank everybody that was able to attend. Comments?
I would just commend the staff. We spent a good chunk of time looking at data and their PLC room and the visualization of their data, tracking their students from the beginning of the year and their progress, and the way that they have come together and that they're using their tiers of support and they're using their PLCs and they're using their data. It's all the pieces that we have heard about for years, but it might be the best culmination of it put together in process that I've seen. So to hear them talk about how they've basically cross-collaborated grade levels and used their data and done whole classroom interventions to address the gaps they're seeing, and I saw the SIAC data and it's working, so I just want to commend. It was a great visit. The kids were great, but I was very impressed with the staff and their data.
I appreciated that we got to see all different things. There was the presentation of the data, but then it was actually the hands-on. It was going through the hallways, being escorted by not just one student, but a group of students of different ages that got along and knew about each other. Being able to go into the hallways, the classrooms, and then the PE classes. It was being able to see a real snapshot of both the behind the scenes, but also what's right in front of you is the real deal. And I'll just say a plug for Novak because yay, and I got to spend time with my grandson and my granddaughter, so yahoo! So. Oh, and Mrs. Walker. Thank you, Mrs. Walker, who's been there forever.
The reading group, reading teachers, talk about passion and excitement. What they have done this year has been amazing. I'll be real curious how the year ends and see how much better it is.
I just wanted to add a kudos in their data room for how they visualize student progress over the year. I love taking all the time to make a good fancy Excel chart or a spreadsheet, color-coded maybe. It's like there's all sorts of ways to do it. But they had made these big physical representations of mountains and meadows and with dates and progress, and their staff physically moved little I don't know, cards representing their students as they made progress through the year. And I loved that, and they spoke about how impactful it was to actually pick up a student and move them, and just, it's so rewarding, it's tactile, it's visual, and just, yeah, kudos on like, that's a great way. You don't need fancy tools sometimes. Just make a big mountain and watch your kids climb it. Thank you.
Okay. As we move forward, the city council was non-existent for anything to do with our district, so we'll move past that. Katie and Laura, you want to talk about Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee?
We asked this time that the DEI committee actually provide us with the minutes and notes that they would like to share, so I'm going to move forward their report on their behalf. Here's the summary of their work. The committee is still working towards meeting the goals of the DEI strategic plan. They work through each strategic plan area to identify continued action steps, including restorative practices and conversational recommendations. They continue to dig deeper into the centered discipline implementation at the high school. The committee recommends that they have some monitored and implemented with just more conversations and help staff clarify their work with other referrals. It's a lot of work to talk about restorative practices. Also, they are going to strengthen community relationships. They are going to propose and try and do this over the summer, that they have 2 meetings that are going to take place, one with Medco and another in a different format, but have a type of forum that's on a template that you could pick up and put into different contexts to have more conversations throughout the district and with other players and strategic folks into our community that have something to help us to further goals, to also engage and listen and build relationships with our community. That's one of their big things, is building relationship with the community. They also would like to build a stronger culture of belonging and respect at our high school level, especially to extend the high school anonymous bullying reporting maybe to even middle schoolers. And then one big thing they found was the difference of what it means to have a high schooler actually serving on this team and giving more than just the data, but actually saying, this is what I experienced in the hallways, in the classrooms. And then it happens that they have many committee members that have served their 3-year terms, and so discussion around how to find especially students to serve on this group, and also within the community at large. They will be reopening their applications in the fall for additional adult and high school student youth. A reminder, high school students, I believe, can get cord volunteer hours for their time that they serve, but as they stated, the students that were serving said they didn't even ever report those because this team is something they just choose to be on and want to be a part of. It was a very meaningful group. This group is really getting down to business, which is lovely. And thanks, Laura, for joining us.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Maybe something for you to think about, pass along, but I hear a lot of focus on the high school, and that is certainly where a lot of things are going on, no doubt. But, you know, that stuff doesn't just start the day a kid wakes up and starts their freshman year. It's starting much, much earlier. My youngest came home last week and was upset because a boy had called her a very misogynistic term that would get me bleeped on TV. So it starts young. And so how do we address those issues early on so that, you know, we're making more of an impact as they get older? So just something to think about and be mindful of.
Agreed. That's one of the reasons that they're recommending taking the anonymous bullying form down to middle schoolers, because they believe that also just gathering all of our middle schoolers together would give an opportunity for some students to share. And then as we will talk tonight, the bullying policy booklet will come through. And again, between Character Strong and a couple other things, what they're seeing is exactly what you're saying. How do we do strength at an elementary level? How do we become community at an intermediate and middle school level? And then as we become young adults, 14 through 18-year-olds, how do we become even a larger community? So yes, yes, and more yes to that.
I would second that, like taking it down even further and maybe starting it with 5th grade, because as they transition out of elementary and they gain that new level of independence, I think that form becomes all the more important. because they are moving through the hallways unaccompanied and more things are happening.
Thank you.
Good report, appreciate it. You're up again.
I'm up again.
We'd like to hear from you.
High School Counselors Advisory Meeting is the last meeting of this year. It is a very enjoyable meeting. The room is filled with caps and gowns and all the things for graduation, so it's an interesting room to be in. I was not alone in that meeting by any means, so that please jump in and your comments as well. I think it's very meaningful. It's, again, a high school meat and potato, what's going on in our district. They had some flyers, which I apologize, I meant to bring and share with you because they had a lot of information. One thing about information, when you put it on a flyer, it has that moment where you see a number and it takes a lot of need to explain said number. And so much of our meeting took place over discussing one number and just some concerns and some also what does it mean to have data that shows both a strength and a weakness or a growing area. And I think that was important for us to all address together and acknowledge that it's a work in progress, especially with data and reporting data, because data backs up what's happening with our children and our youth at that level.
Add one is that they talked about the implementation of some of the early tier services at the high school level, tier 1 and tier 2, that have resulted in a decrease in reliance on students having to take the Apex credit recovery classes, which is a huge success because we know that isn't as high of a quality learning experience as the kids would otherwise be getting. And so we were really glad to see a reduction in the number of students that were utilizing the credit recovery program this year. And then one of the other things that I wanted to highlight was that Katie referred a little bit to the grade level meetings and the work that they were doing to get kids to that, but also the kids that weren't attending that they were still following up with every one of those families to make sure that they were getting that information so that the parents or guardians could follow up with those students and still go through the information with the students. And certainly they're still working on other ways that they can try to incentivize students to participate, but I was reassured when I heard that they were still ensuring that the families were getting that information, even if the student chose not to participate in it. And then one other thing that they shared is that this year they were doing 2 classroom lessons, and they are choosing to go back to 3 classroom lessons of their curriculum next year. So that was a change as well for curriculum.
How often do you guys meet for that? Twice a year?
Yes.
Okay,
This
so,
is my second one.
okay, so then when will you guys meet again? Is it in the fall?
The fall.
November? Okay. Something that has fallen on my radar that I think is important for the board to be addressing is about when counselors are meeting with their students. I became aware that there are some students that are not meeting with their counselors before the scheduling portal closes, meaning that they may not have an opportunity to take the classes that they need or the classes that they want to explore different avenues, both academically and otherwise. A couple years ago in SIAC, we specifically looked at some of our subgroup disparities. One in particular that stood out that I can remember was for our Black and African American students where science was concerned. We had really big discrepancies there, and some of that discussion centered around whether or not those students were getting into the classes that they needed to be getting into in order to have them making more academic progress and giving them opportunities to take more advanced science classes. And it's really hard to do that if they're not getting in front of their school counselor before they're scheduling classes, and certainly before they have or before the opportunity to make those changes come. So I just think that that's a really important thing that the board needs to kind of keep a dialogue about, and what those barriers are, and how, what solutions we can come up with to address those barriers.
Agree. And I will commend the counseling team on first, second, and third quarter. They've met with 98% of the senior class. That's amazing. That's great. That's a great statistic. But sophomores are fourth quarter, and as of last week, it was 45% had met with their school counselor, and there were 2 weeks left of school. And,
And the portal has closed.
And the portal's
weeks
closed.
ago.
But, we also have counselors, they were pulled for ISASP and they were pulled for AP testing, and so they can't meet with their students. So I know there are other opportunities for touch points, but those other opportunities are group settings. They're not one-on-one conversations about your future and your class schedule and your career prospects and college prospects and all the things that are associated with that planning. So I would agree with Rachel that it's a conversation that needs a little more focus, especially for fourth quarter, because they called, this is the area I work in, so I've heard it for years that the sophomore year is the forgotten year. Sophomore year can't be the forgotten year. Like, we don't just skip a whole year of high school. So, and just say, well, we'll catch them when they're juniors. That's not okay.
I think we have to start from the premise that it is not okay that there will be students who do not meet with their counselor before they set their classes for the following year in stone. It's just not acceptable. So that's not pointing fingers, that's not laying blame, that's saying something is going on that shouldn't be going on. How do we fix it? How do we create an environment in which our staff are able to meet with all of their students?
Well, and even at a minimum, is there something that we at a district level can do to say, it's going to take until the end of the year because of all these other things, it's going to take until the end of the year for all of our students to have the opportunity to meet with students. So we're going to keep the registration portal open or we'll allow 10th graders to register for classes up through the last day of school or throughout the summer, or whatever it is that we need to revise. If it's a policy issue, if it's a procedure issue, those are some things that I think are worth looking into, because it clearly is impacting.
Do we have any metrics on why? Is it
So that's a good question on all of this, and I think that it's really important. It was such 80s and 90s for the other three grades, and then you get to this 45% at sophomore year. The first thing I would say is they knew that that was a problem. I mean, they acknowledged that right off the bat. We need better data, I think, again. If this happens the second year, would that be that class 45% as juniors and seniors, or is it specific to sophomore year?
It's sophomores because it's fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter.
Yeah,
And-
I'm all aware of that, but they had not had data to show even themselves that that was what was happening, and they went over and over again in this meeting that their data collecting has been less than desirable, and now they're really focusing on data, and that data is moving us. Every visit we've made at every elementary, middle school, that has been a key piece. How does data help us tell a story that helps us change behavior? So I think that they were acknowledging their work in progress. I had the opportunity just to dig a little deeper in that and just say that the acknowledgement of 45%, they know it's not acceptable, but how do you move forward is going to have to come with a bunch of solutions.
Well, and
they'll look at
anecdotally,
that.
the one counselor that hasn't been assigned AP will meet with all of their students. They had less time away from the office during ISASS, and they weren't proctoring AP tests. And that one counselor is going to meet with all of their sophomores. The other 5 have had other duties as assigned. So I think that that's a big piece, is making sure that they have the time to do the things they're supposed to be doing.
I don't think this is an unknown problem. I think it's a problem that we don't always want to acknowledge. and you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And so, again, it's not pointing fingers at this one or that one or whatever. It's at least starting from a place of acknowledging that's a problem, acknowledging that it's not acceptable, and actually working towards solutions and not just paying lip service to the problem.
And I believe, I don't want to use this as an excuse, but I believe we had a counselor on leave for a while throughout the early spring, late fall, late winter, early spring.
I would
So-
just say that that's accurate, but I do have Melissa Frick and Nathan Ware, looking into this. Start over with a baseline understanding of what, Iowa code is asking, what best practice is, and then even show what kind of a tiered level of support. So what do all students get in the way of high school course planning, college, planning, and then what in a tiered system, what are the extra layers of support students might need at a tier 2 or tier 3? So approach kind of our planning through the MTSS process, but just getting a baseline understanding, I think. So Melissa and Nathan have that on their list of to-dos and have been meeting on it and what current reality is and where we need to be next.
Also, just like to share a kudos to Melissa, because I do think that it was clear that they've been receiving feedback this year and that they've been implementing some of that data as a result of that feedback and have made some big strides this year in improving that process. And so we're seeing the results of your hard work. So thank you.
Thank you. Finance and audit. That for about an hour and a half. Anybody have a thought?
We started talking about the AEA funding and the 60-40 split and this year and how, or next year, and how then it's the year after that it'll be different. So the tracking measures that are being put in place to better understand how AEA funding will be utilized going forward and what we may or may not continue to use. We talked about the budget amendment that's on the agenda. We talked about student fees, which is on the agenda, and then updating facilities, just looking at, John's going to start working on the 10-year facilities plan now that PEPL has been renewed. So that was the summer project. We'll see it in August for approval. You can keep talking, but I'll give you a chance.
No, just some of the other color that goes along with that with the AEA funding and 60-40 split, right? So we're moving to that fee for service. And so we've got lots of questions coming up, such as, so first off, we'll say, as you're aware, a lot of times when an AEA staff member's in a building and they're doing a meeting, a service, and staff will see them and say, oh, hey, by the way, can you help me with this, right? And because it's socialized costs and all that jazz, and so it's easy for the AA staff person to say, oh yeah, no problem, we'll set that up, or here, let's have a meeting about it right now, or whatnot. As fee for service comes, we're gonna have to put in place some protections and some planning and some processes so that we're not just, our staff understands what the fees are, what the services are, when we want to engage, and if there's a process to engage, so that we're not just understanding that the model is different, so our interactions have to be different too.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a shift. They won't be used to hearing, has your principal approved the ability for us to have this conversation? Like, that doesn't exist in the current model. So definitely a shift there.
We talked about as the AEAs are going to, offer fewer services, and we're going to have to go get those services from outside. It's the foreshadowing. We've seen this with other industries, that I expect that some of the service providers will probably go together in some sort of coalition or business or LLC or something, so that they can then provide those services again. So it's just, it's the same model, just new and shiny, different. So we'll kind of see how those models shift. And
Well, and we also have to
see.
remember, we talked about that even though the AEA list of services may not look different, whether they have the staff that's still there to do that, or if staff leave, are they able to fill open positions? Will they able to be providing those same services? We don't know what that looks like. There are a lot of open positions in the A system right now.
We talked about, you hit on student fees, which is in the agenda later. Interesting to note is that we haven't adjusted a lot of those student fees in a really long time. And so part of it is the costs, and the cost for the service and the fee that we charge don't align. So it is time to make way for that. I guess it's two sides of a coin, right? One you might say is Linn-Mar is offering more opportunities for students because we're not charging as much. At the same time, the charging isn't matching the costs, so we've got to jump those up a little bit and put in place a progression to get there. So we're kind of and then you saw on let's see here. Yeah, those are the big things.
I have a question about this shift in the way this whole AEA thing is going to work. Justin, you just talked about, that districts will likely come together to sort of pool their resources and, the economy of scale and what have you. I'm curious, though, who will sort of do the administration of that work? Will we share an employee or employees who do that? I mean, because it's one thing to just here's my check, but
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the example Justin was actually giving was the people that used to work at the AEA who have left for job uncertainty will come together, form their own LLCs, and start offering their services
okay.
for a fee.
Okay.
There is
Such as speech pathologists, right?
Sure.
Instead of just having one, if I was a savvy business person, I would say, well, I'm just going to start a speech pathology business and hire 5 speech pathologists, and then
contract
dole
with the
those
schools.
out to the
Okay.
schools on school district's not going to want a whole
Right.
speech pathologist, but instead they'll staff part of one, right?
Fee for service.
But I
Yes,
mean,
again, fee for service.
but what you're talking about, I mean, that is an option. Schools can come together and do exactly what the AEAs were doing
Right.
on their own. There's always a lead, someone who's gonna, I mean, Amy, you were talking about it with the Grant Wood superintendent's meeting. If would we have to pay for them to facilitate that meeting, or could we just rotate, each district hosts it every month, and then we're not paying for Grant Wood to facilitate a meeting that we could easily Zoom ourselves? It's all gonna be up in the air and different depending on what we decide to utilize and what's still available. And
It's too bad we didn't have a system that was doing all of this before.
crazy
And
times.
as what we're doing right now, and this John brought this to us, so he's kind of looking at the funding piece between him and Amy. There's a lot of moving parts yet and a lot of things going to happen. So I'm sure Melissa's going to be involved because of all the services she receives and everybody else too. So
We're going to live in this 60-40 split for 1 year, and then we're going to live in, we keep the 100%. But as the AEA is building out essentially a menu of choices, ed services and media services, they're going to have a few things that are just standard as part of that 40% that you get this year, but think about it as like a credit card or limit. We are going to see a menu of choices to get up to that 40%. For sure, we'll go beyond that 40%. I mean, we're just services from the AEA. I appreciate what Justin said earlier, though. We're going to have to teach staff and coach staff not to just say, oh, can the school improvement consultant come back or the reading consultant come back if as they're going to bill us now for each time that they're in
Yeah.
the district. But then as the AEA has this built out and the chiefs around the state are working with the DE, they're working with their internal staff, they're working with their local superintendents, the work that they're doing this year will set them up nicely when we do retain 100% next year. They'll have that menu of choices already built. And after that, they intend to, the thinking is, it's not set in stone yet, but they'll be asking us for a 2-year commitment, and that's so that they can staff those 2 years, based on what the rest of the districts are saying.
2 other items we talked about just to throw out, a 10-year plan for facilities. We're working on the activities center yet, so there'll be some stuff going there. And then also the naming of the two facilities, and those will all be brought up in the future too, so we did talk about it, so.
The only other thing I want to just mention, because we did talk about it, and I want to make sure everyone's aware, because so much happens during legislative session, and then there's always like the add-ons to bills that aren't the main focus. We don't talk about them. The March 1st open enrollment deadline has been reinstated. So in case you didn't catch that, there's now an open enrollment deadline again of March 1st, effective.
That'll help us for planning and
What was the
budgeting,
thinking
et cetera.
behind that?
I have a
What was the
follow-
thinking behind that that made that suddenly important again?
I don't want to speculate. I have many, I'm sure at some point, someone who's on the good side of someone said, hey, this is screwing up our budgets and we don't know how to staff because there's this giant unknown of who do we have, but
Laura has a comment.
Just a, well, clarification. So when we last talked about the open meetings law, like it was like almost dead.
didn't pass that law.
Well, I saw it go through, but then she vetoed it. Sorry, the governor vetoed it. So,
It didn't pass. The one with the fees or the fines and all the stuff about open meetings, that didn't go.
okay, I thought I'd seen something in the
I think
news
it
that
passed
she
one
had
side and not
vetoed.
the other or
As
something.
far as we know,
Yeah.
Okay,
it's dead for this year
I
anyway.
didn't see it
Yeah.
come back.
Of no consequence, because we always follow the open meetings law.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Kortmeyer has a report.
Yeah, As always, there's a lot of district honors and highlights, and I know we've got a lot of students involved in state or qualifying for state or athletes. We've got a lot of fine arts things going on. But tonight I'd just like to do some educator recognitions, and that's we have 3 educators being recognized by the Iowa Choral Directors Association for their contributions to music education. Trent Bugowitz, Outstanding High School Post-Secondary Educator, Jennifer Walker, Outstanding Elementary Middle School Educator, and Kim Belt, Outstanding Choral Advocate. Of course, she's our Associate Principal at the high school. Also, last week we did a Future Educators Recognition Day. The high school did. We had 15 Linn-Mar High School seniors who recently committed to pursuing a career in education by signing a Future Educators Letter of Intent, and we've got that up on our website right now. In addition to this, I don't want to talk a lot about what's coming up in the agenda, but one thing that's nestled in the contracts is our SRO agreement, and along with our safety grant presentation tonight, we'll bring you that agreement that we'd like to have you approve for a 3-year period. That's in the consent agenda. We talked already about the Linn-Mar General Fund and AEA flow-through dollars. We've also talked about the LRC just a little bit ago with, as Barry's mentioning, renaming of buildings. That was, this building will be renamed through a process that we commit to in August when our students are back. Just a reminder that we do have our LRC staff moving out of this building. Some departments have moved, a few others are moving this week. The remainder of us next week will be housed between Boulder Peak and Hazel Point. During the month of April and May, I have been spending time in each of our elementary schools, intermediate buildings, middle schools, and our high school, so it's been fun. I have one last visit to get to this week at Echo Hill, so I'm looking forward to getting out there. Last week I participated, or 2 weeks ago maybe, in a podcast for Medco along with Marion Superintendent Janelle Brower. Enjoyed that opportunity. We had the Lions Volunteer Awards on May 8th, hosted by Carla Christian. I attended the LMHS art show on the evening of the 9th. Nathan and Jerry and I and Alex from her team met with some teachers recently about AI. That's artificial intelligence. We do not have a policy in place, and so as we bring together our next board policy committee a meeting as we enter into next school year, that'll be the first time where we're starting to talk about artificial intelligence policies for the district, so that's exciting. But we had more of a conversation about, how do we take a small team of teachers and pilot some things and do some trials next year so that we can get some good staff protocols in place as well as student protocols. So that's exciting work that's happening. And as we've already talked about, we've been meeting, whether it's at our normal monthly meeting with Grant Wood AEA Soups or called into virtual meetings, but as you can imagine, trying to get this AEA flow-through and general fund flow-through piece in place pretty swiftly ahead of that July 1 deadline, we're being called into a few meetings. Next week, we have one of the Grantwood AEA cabinet members and our regional administrator are going to meet with our cabinet to kind of look at that menu of choices that we were just discussing earlier to start making some selections about how we will be using ed and media services next year. And then as far as updates with facilities, of course, we've got several projects in motion. The Performance Arts venue, it's fun to peek out the door, north door here in this building or drive by. Definitely you can see work going on there. Value engineering is still going on, grading work. And then precast concrete samples arrived on site last week for us to view. The admin building, of course, we know that that switchboard is creating a little bit of a delay to when they think substantial completion can happen. That's substantial completion estimated at September 24th there. The high school extension or the LRC remodel here, there was a pre-construction meeting on the 17th. And then high school indoor activity center, we have a small group. There's about 12 of us doing a benchmarking trip on June 6th. We hope to visit many sites for inspiration. OPN is trying to set up visits right now to Mason City, Clear Lake, Waverly, and Waterloo. And then we look forward to kind of lots of year-end activities. Tomorrow we have the 100-hour volunteer luncheon happening, Compass graduation party. On Wednesday, seniors' last day and graduation rehearsal. On Sunday, we have our commencement at 1 o'clock at Alliant Energy Powerhouse. And then next week, if you can believe it, it's our last day of school on the 30th with a 2-hour early dismissal, followed by a teacher workday on Friday.
Questions for Amy?
But it's a congratulations and a thank you. And for me, maybe it's for other people too, but thank you for the communications piece on the Performance Center. It's talking points. It made it really clear to follow. I can answer those questions really carefully, but also it's not mine to hold. The community and the district also owns that same information, so now we can have dialogue about things, and I'm not guessing. So thank you, and thank you for talking points and that facility on that project. And I look forward to more of those kind of like talking point descriptive pages and outlets. And I liked it was on the website, so thank you very much.
Renee is building out the facilities webpage and paying particular attention to those projects that are going on. So we appreciate her work. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, approval of the FY24 amended budget. John, you have any comments?
Yeah, so for Linn-Mar, this is a pretty typical process when we budget, the budget that we just approved for FY25 last meeting. That's our best estimate with what we know at the time, and then as we get closer to the year end, we amend the budget for what it really needs to be. We don't necessarily have to do that. We could set our budget at our maximum spending authority from the get-go, and then knowing that we're going to be well under those targets, but we try to put out a realistic budget every year and then know that as the year goes on, things will change, and we need to amend that. So that's the process we are now.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve the amended certified budget for fiscal year 23-24 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, seconded by Justin. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval amended 2024-2025 calendar. There are 4 changes on there, which is adjusting the calendar we set up on 12/11. Questions, comments?
Motion first. Motion to approve the amended calendar for the 2024-25 school year as presented. Second.
Motion by Katie, second by Rachel. Questions?
I just think it was really smart to go ahead and I know that we were not thrilled with using Boulder Peak on Election Day, and now that it's so many more of our buildings, I think it's the smart, safer move to just make it a work day and have the kids stay home. So
I totally agree.
Got a note at my house that we're going to meet at, our election is going to be at Excelsior for the June 4th election.
Oh, they are moving
Do
it
you
up
know
for
why
June
they-
already. Yeah.
Do we know why they changed the locations?
I don't know why they like our building suddenly more than the standard, like it's always been churches and now it's, I don't know.
The biggest piece in that is, so we're obviously a public building, so as long as we meet all the requirements, we can't say no. And then ADA compliance has always been a huge piece, but it's gotten a lot more stringent. So some of the places where they used to be able to hold elections, they can't anymore. So Boulder Peak is obviously 3 years old, 4 years old. So with that, it meets all of the current codes. And even over time, that might get to a spot where it won't meet current codes because you can have sidewalks that settle and all of a sudden your path to get in the building no longer meets it. So I think that's probably happened in a lot of the places that they used to use. And then being a federal election, they generally have more precincts than a non-federal election. So that's part of the increase this year too.
And to share this information both with staff and then I think families next week, just so people understand what we did and why we did it. On student day, on election day, just made sense for a lot of reasons, given the multiple attendance centers that will be involved in the November election. So, for consideration.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's an indirect proof point of our ability to maintain our buildings well, as opposed to, well, yeah. So,
Okay, have a motion by Katie, second by Rachel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of bonds. And a real positive note on this is we were able to pull it down from 20 mil to 16.6.
Make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing and providing for the terms of issuance and securing the payment of $16,635,000 school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2024 of the Linn-Mar Community School District, State of Iowa, under the provisions of Chapter 423F of the Code of Iowa, and providing for method of payment of said bonds.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Melissa. This is a roll call vote.
Director Foss.
yes.
Director Lau Lancaster.
Yes.
Director Maury.
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Walker.
Yes.
Director Wall.
Yes.
President Buckholz.
Yes. Motion, all in favor, well, I guess that's it. Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of the paying agent for the same bonds.
Make a motion to approve the agreement appointing UMB Bank N.A. of West Des Moines, Iowa to service as paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent agreement, and authorizing the execution of same.
Second.
Motion by Rachel, second by Britt. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Director Lau Lancaster.
Yes.
Director Maury.
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Walker.
Yes.
Director Wall.
Yes.
Director Foss.
Yes.
President Buckholz.
Yes. Motion carries. Motion to approve the tax exemption certificate.
Motion to approve the form of tax exemption certificate regarding the issuance of $16,635,000 in school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2024 of the Linn-Mar Community School District, State of Iowa.
Second.
Motion by Justin, second by Britt. Questions? Roll call, please.
Director Maury.
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Walker.
Yes.
Director Wall.
Yes.
Director Foss.
Yes.
Director Lau Lancaster.
Yes.
President Buckholz.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion to approve the continuing disclosure certificate regarding the issuance of $16,635,000 school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2024 of the Linn-Mar Community School District, State of Iowa.
Second.
Motion by Rachel. Was that Katie? Second by Katie. Questions on that? Another roll call.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Walker. Director Wall.
Yes.
Director Foss.
Yes.
Director Lau Lancaster.
Yes.
Director Maury.
Yes.
President Buckholz.
Yes. Motion carries. New business, approval of bullying and harassment brochure.
Make a motion to approve the bullying harassment brochures for the 2024-25 as presented in Exhibit 701.1-2.
Second.
Motion by Rachel, I'm sorry, motion by Britt, second by Katie. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Student fees.
Motion-
Approve the student fee schedule for the 2024-25 school year as presented in Exhibit 702.1.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Britt, questions?
I appreciate Justin's comments about the last time these were updated. And I just wondered if someone could give me clarification on the lowest income families in our district. And are these fees the same across the board? Is there any relief for those fees for people who genuinely, like, $50 at the beginning of the year currently, I mean, that could be a chunk for someone. So,
There's the reduced rate is actually the low income, like, is it free and reduced lunch? Is how you qualify for any of the reduced rates on the fee schedule.
okay.
Then there are like outside groups that will support those families who still find those fees to be cost prohibitive.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was like clarified and reminder, not only for myself, but for everybody who's like, oh, fees, and that can be a chunk. Sure.
Absolutely.
Those are all addressed, and I think somebody shared with me, I hope I'm not wrong, but our children do not go hungry. You know, so it's not like if you don't have money in your account, they're gonna say, sorry, kid, get out of here. They're gonna find a way to feed them, so.
I look forward to the day when we can do more to feed kids all day when they need it.
Okay, thanks. Your comments? Others? Motion by Melissa, second by Britt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of policy recommendation.
Motion to approve the first reading of policy recommendations for Series 803.1, purchasing, bidding goods and services, as presented in Exhibit 703.1.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Katie. Questions? Rachel, sorry. I thought we split you up. Any other questions or comments for John?
I can make a comment on it real quick. So the biggest pieces of this is the 803 revision or revision 1 and 2. We need those to be included in our policies in order to be reimbursed through the grant. So while we had to make changes to those two, we thought it made sense just to do the whole 803.1 series. So that's the biggest reason for bringing this now, is so that we can get reimbursed for our grant money that's coming up here next.
Thank you for taking the time to do that.
We have a motion. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. John, Melissa, and Jerry are going to give a presentation. This grant's been, well, we've been waiting on this, right?
So the public has this exhibit that's up, and you all have a copy of the grant award.
I love the acronyms.
So we wanted to just, once again, circle back around with the board and the community regarding this grant and the money that we have secured. So again, this grant is through the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management in conjunction with the Department of Ed. It was for all PK school districts to support school safety. Each district could apply for $50,000 per building for minor capital security improvement aligned with each building completed by those vulnerability assessments. So again, it's $50,000 per building. We can't take other buildings' money and use it for other buildings. It's $50,000 for each building in particular. So there's no covering different buildings with different things. We were only allowed to make improvements based on areas that were identified in the assessment when they came in and did that. We were able to secure 2 amendments, reaching out to Linn County Emergency Management based on some misinformation that was in a couple of our buildings. So we were able to navigate around that to really prioritize those areas. And then anything that we do has to comply with those federal procurement standards that John just talked about. So that's your policies.
Yeah, so this is just a sample of a piece that we did not have included in our policy originally that needed to be included. Federal regulations and the way that they talk about purchases is a little different than what we're accustomed to. So micro purchase, small purchases, sealed bids, there's kind of extra levels in there and thresholds of what we have to do to meet their guidelines that are different from our general board policy or state code. Can we keep going? Sure. Okay. So within the vulnerability assessment, there were 6 different categories of eligible improvements: entry control, electronic security and communication, barriers, perimeter security, illumination, and building envelopes. So based on the assessment, if one of those wasn't called out as a need for improvement, then we couldn't spend money on it. It had to be listed on the assessment for us to be able to do the project. So like Melissa said, we put in a couple of addendums to get a couple things included that we knew that our buildings were lacking. So from that, we came up with 3 priority areas for our buildings, and trying to, in an effort to get all of our buildings kind of up to the same standard or have the same types of things in all of our buildings. And because of the age of some of our buildings and when they were built, right now they're kind of all across the board. So we're trying to get ourselves to a certain level. The first thing that we wanted to do there was a mass notification system to be able to have that in all of our buildings, and then some security camera ads in order to be able to see the envelope of all of our buildings. And then from there, some door hardware. And there's kind of 2 classifications of door hardware. One's classroom hardware, and then some different hardware on some of our entries that was pointed out within that grant.
So along with that, we also took the information that was from the vulnerability study, and already at the end of last year during April's crisis committee meeting that we meet 3 times a year, we presented that information to all of our members of the crisis committee, talked through what the priorities were, what they were seeing, had some great conversations, and continued into that this fall as we move forward with this. And the consensus of that group, as well as internally within our district and the reports, was these were the top 3 areas that we really needed to prioritize first, based on the information that we had.
So these are the projects that, excuse me, per building that we're going to be working on that are covered by the grant. You'll notice in the first one's the mass communication system that we're going to put in, and the last 4 where they're asterisks, those 4 buildings are our older buildings, and they will take up all of or exceed the $50,000 grant. Those that exceed that grant, we will make up for those funds, and I believe it's through PEPL. Those that don't spend $50,000 on the mass communication, we will supplement them with security cameras that were highlighted to include the envelope of the building or some, hidden corners there. And then those that do not meet the $50,000 after that, we will add the door hardware in those buildings.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So in those older buildings, and as we're kind of moving along, they will not have then necessarily the cameras or the door hardware? Like, we will not be taking on those projects
They won't
under
have
PEPL?
additional.
Okay,
All of our buildings right now have secure entrances and security cameras
Okay.
and those things. They won't have the extended security camera coverage for the envelope of their building if there happens to be a blind spot or something like that. That would be covered by PEPL as we identify those things in that 10-year plan.
okay.
Yep. And so these are the buildings that already have that mass communication system, and the items that we already have in every building.
I think what I heard Rachel ask, and I think what I heard you say, is that not all of them are tagged in this, and so the question was, does that mean that some of them just won't have this? What I think I heard from you in saying is that those that don't have all that stuff, that's still a focus of ours, just not covered by the grant right now.
Get through the grant, and then we'll use the PEPL dollars that we've set aside as part of that conversation we were having as part of the PEPL 10-year plan to bring everybody up to that similar standard over several years.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So after a few years through PEPL, this list on the left would then include our mass notifications, our security camera building envelope, and our door lock. So that would get everybody up to that level. And then at some point in that time or shortly before that, then we'll kind of do another internal assessment and say, what else, what do we need to do now, security, to continue that investment in security in all of our buildings? projects will be. We need to get through these ones first and then make that evaluation and how to move forward from there.
So I got here ridiculously early because I was coming from a meeting and it didn't make sense to go home. I wouldn't have come back if I had to go home. So I read through the grant and I did the math on all of the overages by building, and it's 271,000 that we're over. So do we have like a number of years, like a goal of when we expect to get everyone up to these 3-tiered goals? Like,
Such that we would have equity amongst buildings
Yes.
in terms of their
I know you said a
level
couple of
security.
years, clearly not the full 10 years, but I mean, do we have a goal of we're going to accomplish this in 2 years or 3 years, or is that something that, I
Or
mean,
do we need to wait for some of this to happen before we can really say how long it would take?
Year one, we will get through the mass communication. By the end of this, we will have that installed. By December of 2025, all buildings will have that.
Yep. And Britt, to answer your question as far as the overages, and how long until, I don't have that information because we haven't done, haven't gotten price quotes for example, door hardwares on all of the buildings because we knew that the Rollins system was gonna take all $50,000 needed. So what we did is if that Rollins system, the intercom was, used up all $50,000, we kind of stopped there and didn't get any quotes because we knew that would take all $50,000. So we have some work there to identify a dollar amount of need from Pebble and how many years we think that would take to get everybody to that
Okay.
point.
all right, well, I'm very interested in that when it hopefully comes sooner rather than later. Because, yeah, I think it's important to have equity among our buildings, and especially, you know, our older buildings, they just give that perception of being, I don't know, less fancy and safe, which they're not. But
They are not.
they are not. I understand that, but I would love to know a timeline of when we get to make everybody the same.
You brought up this concept of non-equity. I've been to the buildings. I always thought that all of them offer an equal level of security.
But
for
they do.
kids.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm not
I
saying
don't-
they're not. I'm just saying that,
If we're talking, that feels a little disingenuous. We're talking about,
I'm asking.
nobody suggested that.
Okay.
And what they're.
Misheard then.
And just,
I apologize.
and what we're talking about too, and like in finance, Amy is going to do a survey of all the principals in each building on a 10-year facility plan too. And in that plan, it's gonna talk about, what do you need at Boulder Peak? What do you need? What do you need? What do you want? And that's kind of gonna fit into this. This isn't gonna be 10 years out, but it's gonna be part of what the Pepple dollars are gonna be used for, I think. Yeah.
I'll jump in with a Pepple question. So one might look at this and think, oh, now we have a chunk of cash that we can use for safety purposes. Well, now we don't have to spend Pepple money on that. So now we have extra Pepple money that we don't have to spend on these safety things. And you had mentioned that these things actually will cost more than the grant that covers, but for somebody who still thinks, oh, now we have way more Pepple money than we need, do we?
no.
Never really budgeted into Pepple, were they?
Yeah, I would say that this grant has allowed us to expedite some of these projects because of the additional $600,000 in funding across the district.
Thank you for humoring my hypothetical question.
I have a
appreciate
quick grant funding question. So this is all federal funding, correct? So do you anticipate, and I don't know what the funding stream is for this, but will this trigger any historical site assessments or Davis-Bacon requirements or any of those kinds of things that are going to potentially slow things down?
Not to my knowledge on the historical side of things, and I think
Okay.
any of the improvements that we're making wouldn't affect the historical value of any of the buildings. And then Davis-Bacon, thankfully this grant's obsolete from that. But I think one thing you'll find with Davis-Bacon and what I've found in the past is here in Cedar Rapids and Iowa, a lot of our local tradespeople, they're already making more than what the
Okay.
Davis-Bacon wage is. So sometimes it's like, man, this Davis-Bacon requirement, this is going to be a lot of work. It's really not because our contractors are already paid well in this
Good,
area.
okay. I I was concerned whether or not that was going to impact our ability to find contractors to do these things, so it's good to know that that's not going to be an issue.
For the, sorry, one more thing. For the Performing Arts Center, which is going to be connected to the high school, so is that in the plan then to have whatever, it's in that as well as, okay, all right. Thank you.
Probably all priced in as a new building, right? Yeah.
And to go back a little bit, I think our more historical buildings, they're the ones that need the mass communication system, which is not structurally changing
Okay.
that piece. And those are the ones where it costs a bit more to put in because they are not as recent, and so we had to factor that in. So we just wanted, again, to summarize, I know there was a couple of thoughts, and some of the dates have changed over the course of this work. The vulnerability assessments were done in December of 2022. Assessment results were given to us last spring, so 20 of 23. Application deadline, originally that had been sooner, but there was some glitches, not on our side, but with the grant process, so they extended that to December 31st of 2024. We submitted it on February 5th, and we received notice that we received our dollars on May 1st of 2024. We will begin work as soon as possible, as soon as this summer, as we continue to work through the school year where it's feasible and finish next summer. We have until December 31st of 2025 to do it. We've not been able to start on anything. We're not allowed to spend a cent until we have these policies in place, and then we can start moving forward with that work. So those are some pretty strict guidelines that they have put on us. Some other districts across the state have not necessarily followed that, and they have learned the hard way about the reimbursement process. And so there has been a lot of slow and go in this process. It has not been as streamlined as originally it had seemed to be, and they continue to provide more guidance and support as we worked through the process to help districts secure these funds. Questions?
We asked all of them.
This is hefty. This is a lot of work, and I
All
just
good
thank you
question, yeah.
for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Outstanding work,
So we will continue to move forward.
Thank you.
guys.
Do we need to approve that award if
Well-
we can?
Make a motion to approve the school safety grant award with the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Laura. Questions, I'm assuming were all answered? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have salary. There's just one item that I want to mention that will not vote on 709 administrators' salary increases.
Motion to approve the 3.00% total package increase for the Linn-Mar Education Association for fiscal year 2024-25.
Second.
By Melissa, second by Rachel. Questions?
Barry, can I say just a couple things about, I guess, all of these, and that way I'm done talking for the night, I hope. So 3% with LMEA, this will be their second of a 3-year agreement with them. Within that agreement, it was 3% or the average CPI from March to May, whichever's lower. Actually, right now, March to May CPI is 3%, so pretty easy there. LMSEAA, that was at 3.85. Originally, our goal there was to get in at 3.58, and that's part of that was to get them, that employee group at a $15 minimum starting salary. We were able to get it done for 3.85. That was roughly $20,000 more than what we were planning to do there. LMSA, 3%. Not much to say there. Part-time food and nutrition, they're at a 4.69%. If you remember, I had calculated that to be 4.7, so right on target there. Just a little context, that 4.7% equates to an increase of $28,000 from this year's cost to what next year will be. So seems like a big number. It's a pretty small group, They work part-time and they only work during the school year. So overall, dollar-wise, that's not a huge increase.
That one also raises everyone to 15.
Correct, and that one raises, that raises the starting salary to part-time, for part-time food nutrition up to $15 an hour as well. That's it.
Okay, we have a motion by Melissa, second by Rachel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 106.
Motion to approve the 3.85% total package increase for Linn-Mar Secretarial and Educational Assistant Association for fiscal year 24-25.
By Britt, second by Melissa. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 707.
Motion to approve a 3% total package increase for the Linn-Mar Service Association for fiscal year 2024-25.
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Britt. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion to approve a 4.69% total package increase for the part-time nutrition services staff for fiscal year 2024-25.
Second.
Motion by Rachel, second by Britt. Questions?
Just want to say that between this and the LMSEAA, this is something the board's been talking about for years, trying to get everybody to 15. And I know that we still, like, now we're going to set the next goal, but this is a long time coming, and I'm really glad that we were able to make this happen.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve a 3% total package increase for administrators, managers, exempt and non-exempt staff for fiscal year 24-25.
Second.
All right, I didn't get the second. Britt? Motion by Melissa, second by Britt. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Of the open enrollment requests as presented.
Okay.
Motion by Rachel, second by Britt. Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as, well, with the walk-in exhibit.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Laura. Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board calendar. I will be attending the 100-hour celebration tomorrow. Anybody else?
We'll be there.
Britt?
Health pending.
Yep.
I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow.
Don't overdo it, right? I will also be attending the celebration. Anybody else?
Hoping to.
The Compass celebration?
I'm going to try and make it
I
to
was
that.
I'm gonna
Sure.
try,
3
but
o'clock? Yeah.
I've got conflicting duties.
City Council. Laura, you gonna be able to do that, or?
We'll be virtually watching the city council meeting.
Perfect, thanks. Commencement, come all spiffed up, be there, what do we have to be there, 12:30, 12:15?
30.
12:30?
What time?
12:30.
30.
That answers all my questions, thank you.
And you can park behind, and we can go in the service entrance.
Can you define behind?
Let me explain it to you
Draw you
after
a
the
map.
meeting.
You'll explain it
Under
to
all
us
the
later.
overpasses, there's some parking lots back there.
Between three.
We'll explain it after the meeting.
You will- you
Not
will-
back
you
there,
will walk-
somewhere else.
You will
back
walk
there.
into the building, and there'll be a group of people standing there putting a flower on you. Then you'll stand there and greet students or whoever you want to greet, and somebody will come to you and say, "Get in line," and they'll have us lined up where we are and where we're supposed to sit. You walk up and stage, you get introduced, and that's really kind of all we do.
Stand up, you sit down, you stand up, you sit down, you leave.
Melissa told me to wear black.
Yes.
Black and red,
Black and red.
Black and red.
Black and red if you can.
some white.
Just because there's lots of black on stage.
Yeah.
It's a really nice ceremony.
Well,
You'll enjoy it.
It's a cool day. Yeah.
Need to put on our cap and robe? No?
No.
You can put that into policy next time you all need to wear. Okay, City Council, well, last day of school, of course. City Council, Rachel's involved, next board meeting. District will be closed on the Juneteenth holiday for staff. Marion City Council on the 20th.
Where will the board meeting be on the 10th?
what we're,
Working that out.
We are working on that. We're hopeful that it will be in the chambers of the City Hall.
through that. Officer Dobbs went there today to look things over to see how it was going to work, and that'll be nice. Takes pressure off of our technology folks, really. So the city council has to meet, basically, and
It should be on Thursday's council agenda.
Okay, so the public will know for sure on Thursday?
Well, I don't know if we'll announce it through our normal
Okay,
mechanisms, but yeah,
I just don't want folks to be confused.
no.
we'll get it out there.
Yeah.
Okay, city council on the 20th.
I can do that one.
Board meeting, Lion Open, city council on July 18th. I know that gets out there, but
Can do it.
thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other things good for the good of the board?
Just want to acknowledge this is our final meeting in this room.
Wow.
Oh,
In the old band room.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I remember
It was
it's a
band room
library.
when my kids were here.
You gotta go, how many ways has this room been utilized? Go Atlas.
Well, we hand it off to Atlas for their good purposes. So.
Okay,
The only other thing I want to share is I had the cool experience last week of judging the design, I'm going to get it wrong, the engineering and design senior capstone. And the kids that participate, they have to take, I think it's either 3 or 4, it could be up to 4 of their engineering and design classes. And the senior capstone is an entire semester where they solve a problem and they build a prototype and they research it and they manufacture it and they test it, and then they have to present, and it has to be polished and like a real business world presentation of pitching an idea and a prototype. And I did it for the first time last year, and then I just did last week, and I'm blown away every year by just the knowledge that that is a class that our students are taking, and all of them are headed off to become some sort of engineer or software engineer, civil, all like. It's incredibly applicable for what they want to do with their life, and it's incredible the things that they're coming up with, and that's an everyday occurrence in our high school. So I wanted to say kudos. All of those young men will be wearing the Project Lead the Way stoles on Sunday, and the winning team gets a scholarship. So it's just a really cool opportunity and an amazing feat for our students to accomplish.
Was it all boys?
This year, but the last 2 years, the alumni guest judge has been a past winner, and both times they were women. So did mention that it is kind of hard to get girls to take those classes, but in the past when they have, they've won the whole thing. So.
all righty, it is 6:13.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Rachel, second by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. What do we need, 10 minutes?